For example, the right to property. This is no longer a fundamental right now, but once it was a fundamental right. Now it has been given a status of a constitutional or legal rights. Okay, this is one thing. Another thing is that the right to education. So it was previously a fundamental right. It has now been converted into a constitutional right. The right to property. Now, just think of something just opposite to it. Right to education. First, it was under the Directive Principles, Article 45. So, after 86th Amendment for the Constitution, now the Article 21A, the right to education has become a part of the fundamental right. Previously, it was not a fundamental right. So, these are some flexibilities that are ingrained in these constitutional rights framed by Dr. Ambedkar. As a result of which, Dr. Ambedkar might have thought that since these will tend to change over time and there might be some impending necessities that could drive such change, so he might have thought that it's better to have it under the purview of constitutional rights that will be quite convenient for the people, or that will be quite convenient to change over time, because they don't have an attachment of certain fixed principles like the fundamental rights have. That means the right to free association, right to liberty, right to equality, which are very hard to challenge.
I remember one phrase which Dr. Amartya Sen, he was put on the argument in India. He was talking about Dr. Ambedkar. And when he was talking, I think it's the 4th chapter where he's talking about voices, and on that chapter he was talking about that when Dr. Ambedkar presented this this constitution to the parliament, he said that I have make everybody politically equal. I have given political, in the case everything you have, there is a political equality in it.
But he can guarantee social equality.
But yes, because the Indian social equality,
yes.
But the social inequalities existing in Indian.
That Dr. Ambedkar has explicitly stated in one of his interviews in BBC.
The economic inequality and social inequality
will be there.
And what he forecasted is this can be that this social inequality and this
economic
inequality could go in a certain level that it can break the fundamental structure of the constitution.
Yes, right. So, and he was also at times he was also very much pessimistic about the entire electoral process, because he thought that when people don't have a meager food to eat, there is huge social inequality around. They don't have any awareness about the election or what representation actually means. They will abide by an image of a bullock. They will abide by the image of a cart. They will abide by the image of a hurricane. They will abide by the image of a tree. They will just follow that, and they will be vehemently misguided by those in power. So this social inequality will have repercussions on the political equality of the people.
And just moving to this line of thought, Amartya Sen said that having a right is not enough. You have to have capability to turn that right into a certain form of facilities which you want in your life.
That is why Professor Amartya Sen has talked about the expansion of capability. He has not talked about the capability as a singular monolithic thing or a monolithic phenomenon. He actually talked about capability as an expansion of freedom.
Yes, development as freedom.
Expansion of freedom. So
this was a book which was
exactly. So why he talked about the expansion? Because freedom is not something which is static. Freedom is dynamic. Expansion means having liberty or having an increasing and a progressive liberty to have a say to different things that once was outside my purview to decide. So this is an expansion of freedom. That is why I talked about expansion of freedom and continuously cutting down on different areas of unfreedoms. So this term is unfreedom. Unfreedom is very important.
So, do you think not having a voice is also an unfreedom?
Definitely, definitely. But the thing is that these are not static. For example, today we are living in the digital age. We are living in an age of AI.
Mhm.
So anything connected with decision making, or for example, digital ethics. When we are talking about digital era or we are talking about artificial intelligence, there must be some ethical principles that should guide those exercise. But we were not in a position to exercise those rights 20 years back because there was no AI at that time, there was no digital environment at that time. So that is why he has talked about the expansion, because the expansion means the progressive capability of people to have a say on certain things which were not there previously or which were not there under their purview of decision making previously. Because it is not the thing that they were not able to decide at that time, but the thing is also that those things were not available in the first place.
Right. So coming back to where we start, just to conclude, because we have expanded the concept, and just to come back and summarize it. So the very important point you touched on is that not having a voice is not having a freedom also.
Yes.
Unfreedom. And not having a voice means it is also not getting the rights. You can have the rights on paper. It's a paper right. But you don't have the capability to turn the right into the facilities which
Yes.
is need in the life. So that is what I wrote this, my experience I wrote in a book.
Just I want to give another anecdote to help this discussion to conclude. There is a book by the eminent sociologist T.K. Woman. The name of the book is Citizenship, Nationality and Ethnicity. This was a book written by the eminent sociologist T.K. Woman, where he said that the project of mixing the state, the concept of state, the concept of nationality, and the concept of nation to the project of intermixing these things is a fascist project. Why?
Right. So let me come very short
Yeah.
here. In our constitution, it was never written nation. It was always union of states.
Yes.
So how do you put this what you are taking
Right.
on that
Now,
context?
state is a political entity, isn't it? Nationality, or rather, I would rather discuss about the term nation and nationality. Now, the term nation is a cultural concept, and the nationality is a legal term with certain rights, duties, and responsibilities. Now, when you are intentionally eluding the differences between these, your state identity, that means your political identity, your nation, the identity of the nation, which is a cultural identity, and the identity of a nationality, which is a legal identity, gets blurred. That means when there is a blurring between these things, your political identity becomes your cultural identity becomes your legal identity, and there is a kind of process, or there is a kind of tendency that these three actually work in unison.
And just to come out from that point, that if
So-
somebody does not
Does not align with that particular
can
thing.
we do a structural
Yes.
exclusion?
So this is where I am actually coming. This is where I am actually heading towards. Though, because India is a country, or citizens can have multiple nationalities, people can have multiple linguistic divisions, caste divisions, color divisions, cultural divisions. But what you are trying to do, you are actually trying to mix them up, and you are trying to homogenize all these fragmented identities into a singular identity based on certain principles. That principle can be a cultural principle, that can be a religious principle, That is why your nationality, nation, and state becomes mixed.
And what
And
happens?
those
what happens to those people
who are lying outside that,
Absolutely.
they
And
will they will just thrown away. They will just be thrown away because they don't align with that particular cultural, political, and national identity or the marker that have been set by the state.
So now,
Now you can understand
Now-
why.
if these people which are in the crux of throne, if they don't have a voice,
They don't have a voice because they are not given the voice by the authority actually. What can you do? Because if your name have been ousted from the list, you cannot directly go to the Supreme Court for your judgment. This is a problem of constitution. This is a problem of fundamental rights also. You cannot change fundamental rights right away. But you can approach a court for your constitutional rights also. But the thing is that, for example, for electoral rights, your name have been scrapped. Can you go to the Supreme Court directly? No. What you have to do? You have to go through certain electoral processes that have been set by the Election Commission. And what is that? Adjudication, tribunals, and all that. So these rules are also laid down by the electoral process or the Election Commission. So the way out for
you are agreeing that there is a crisis on the democratic voice in India.
Definitely, because this is not the voice from below. This is a voice from there,
Top.
from the top-down arrangement. It has always been a top-down arrangement.
And when you have a top-down arrangement, you don't have participation, depth. And if there is no participation depth, you know what Amartya Sen puts out, democracy is a public reasoning. You don't have that public reasoning. You have certain group of people's reasoning imposed to a larger group of people. And those other people who are excluded, structurally excluded, they don't have any reason to put in the public domain. Now, democracy is a choice. We are choosing.
And the thing is that what is reason and what is unreason, there is a concept of Foucault that the power knowledge nexus. A power knowledge nexus of reason always marginalizes the unreason. That means a particular power at a particular point of time, having a particular knowledge base, having a faith in a particular kind of knowledge, always tries to marginalize another kind of knowledge. A particular voice always tries to tries to repress other voices, because that time that voice becomes the dominant voice, and that voice or that knowledge is backed by that particular power. It has always been there.
Right.
So this power knowledge nexus of reason, quote unquote reason, always marginalizes the unreason. Unreason, that means it is not a generalized unreason or generalized reason, but it has been framed unreason by that nexus of power knowledge at that particular time frame.
So that was what happening on the democracy of Greece,
Definitely.
democracy of Rome. But they had a culture that people.
Why not the democracy of India? Why you are escaping?
No, I'm not escaping.
This is also happening in India
Yes,
also.
that's what argumentative India says. That,
Yes, definitely.
that we had, when we talk about Naya framework, the Indian rationalistic framework, Gautam Maharishi framework. This talks about rationality, probably rationality on the sense that point of time we have still monarchy, and so rationality has not been expressed on the outer domain.
Right.
It was just your inner domain to go and get liberation. So in Jnana Yoga we talk about liberation of ourselves from the nature. But then now if a person remains unliberated, what we call as unfreedom is there. This is the question which comes to me to conclude this session, because I have written this book, Crisis of the Democratic Voice. And to me it took that if you don't have a democratic voice, your possibility of what we say the four great, Purushatras of Hindu religion, I would say that Hindu philosophy, Hinduism is that, Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. Moksha is the most important part of the Vedanta. It's a liberation. And that liberation is also the central thought process of the constitution. So one is trying to talk about the inner liberation, the other is trying to talk about outer liberation. Just to conclude, how are we standing on a position to actually seek for inner liberation if we are so much, into a state of unfreedom?
That means that your question comes down to the point how these constitutional rights can be transferred into the fundamental rights. Because unless it is made a fundamental right, there is no point to get out of this regimented kind of thing. The thing is that the Article 362 that I have already mentioned about, the People's Representation Act, they can be modified, they can be amended. And another thing is that, which is very much important, is that there are certain things that can be also done. For example, for example, you have to include the right to vote within the Part 3 of the fundamental rights.
Okay.
The Part 3 of the fundamental rights actually, if they are not brought under the purview of fundamental rights, there is no escape. And another thing is that a new article can be included, for example, Article 19A, because Article 19 in Constitution of India is actually given a liberty for speech, liberty for movement, liberty for free association, etc. But if the voting rights is merged into these rights, the voting rights as a political right, which has an independent character, might get eluded. The right might get mixed up with all those rights. Therefore, if there is a possibility of, or there is a space to include that right as an adjunct of Article 19 as a 19A, then it can have an autonomous right of its own, that the right to vote can be brought under the purview of the fundamental rights, so that it cannot be scrapped by any particular agency. Because it can be a commission, but a commission can be full of omissions.
Thank you very much. This is such a lovely in-depth discussion, and we really come to understand the entire scenario in a very intricate term. Thank you so much for this. Thank you all the audience for joining us.